Welcome to If These Walls Could Talk. I'm your host and super CEO, Lindsay Liu.
Joining me today is Derek Morton, the owner and principal broker of Netgain Property Management based in Utah. He founded the company in 2016 and manages nearly 200 doors ranging from single-family homes and apartments to student housing. As a result, he has on occasion found himself in situations that call for backup. Today, he has a story about a roof repair gone awry. Thank you for joining me today, Derek.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, give us a little bit of context about this property and how you came to manage it.
So this was a property that I basically did as a favor for a friend. He knew this owner that had kind of been in a rough spot. His wife was struggling with dementia, and so he was trying to keep up with that. And he was an older gentleman and was struggling with his tenants, and he was getting taken advantage of. And so he reached out to a friend of mine, and I don't know what what can I do? How do I do it? And he's like, well, talk to Derek. And so I got the situation and decided, I'm like, I'll take it on. I got to help this guy is going through a lot. And we've been in situations where we've had to clean up stuff before anyways. And so I'm like, we'll just get this done. And it just kind of torpedoed from there. So it's the favor that kept
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Calling more favors. So definitely. So
okay, so you said it torpedoed. Start off with, you were saying you were trying to clean up the situation. Kind of what was going on when you first walked in?
So it's interesting when I started property management, and what a lot of people don't understand until you get in is we're really ground level on a lot of issues facing society. So mental health is big. So what we didn't know at the time, and we learned, as we got to know him a little bit, is this tenant had major mental health issues, and none of his fault. He had severe PTSD. He was bipolar. Our local police knew of him, and if he was getting ready to spiral, like, he could call 911, and they would be able to just help talk him down, so we didn't do anything crazy. But we didn't know any of that at the time. So we take over the property, and with all the tenants, we just kind of say, hey, this is a fresh start. They hired us. So we start trying to work through the issues. We realize this isn't going to work. And so we end-of-termed him, and we gave him 2 months so that he would have ample time to try to find a place, because we knew it was going to be difficult. Last thing we wanted was someone on the street, if we could avoid it. And so, but in the meantime, the owner approved, and and this tenant had also, like, this piece of crap, and of course he hadn't helped make it nice, like, let's put it that way. And so instead of waiting the 2 months, we had approval. He was okay with us getting the new roof done, and we were coming out of a heavy snow winter and wet spring, and we had a time that we're like, sweet, we can get the roof done, because it was leaking. And that we bring in a roofer that was a good friend of mine, and he gets started on the work, and it triggered his PTSD. So the tenant came out and said all sorts of niceties about what was about to happen, and threatened to kill the roofer. And he was threatening to pull the rope, because the roofers had kind of kept themselves tied up there for safety, and was going to pull the rope and just take care of it. And so if they didn't stop right then, right there. And so I get a call from the roofer saying I'm off the job. Like, he threatened to kill me. And I go over there to talk to the tenant and say, you agreed to do this. And, and he had all sorts of niceties to say to me as well. And so he threatened to kill him and then pull him off the roof. And so obviously we couldn't get any roofers, and we realized, hey, we're kind of stuck here. And
how far into this roof job were they? Just,
they
for anyone that's done a roof project.
They pulled off the vast majority of the shingles, and it's starting to pull some of the roofing wood I can't remember the technical term.
Like the flashing, the sunroof.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
flashing and sub stuff. And so we actually had like a hole in the roof that we had to leave,
Yeah.
right? So the next week we get like 6 inches of snow. It's raining every day. The tenant hadn't paid rent, so we're just like, screw it. So we post a 3-day. We start forcing the eviction. He has called the city and county building on us, saying, "Hey, I don't have a roof. I can't inhabit it." So I'm having to go to the city and meet with them. Like, here's what happened. I'm bringing in the roofer. Like, we're trying. Here's the documentation. Of course, it's going over holiday, so we can't get the court hearing in time. And so it was like 6 weeks that he had no roof while it's raining and snowing. And when we finally get everything ready, we go to make sure he's not there because he kept telling us, "Hey, I'm out. Like, you don't have to go through this." So we go, but I'm like, bring my attorney or bring the locksmith because we're like, if we're gonna like, if he's
Just
out,
in
like, we're
case.
changing the locks the same day. I don't concealed carry, but my attorney was like, I got to go witness this. He conceals carry, and same with the locksmith. So we pull up and they kind of open the door and they're kind of like, they're police, just kind of, they don't have the guns pulled or anything, but they're ready. They're just kind of standing behind the door of the car. Just, I start walking up and he opens the door and starts screaming, "I told you I was gone. Why didn't you believe me?" We're like, "Because you're here." Like, you're not gone. Like, this is obvious, right? So finally we go through everything, the courts. He doesn't show up to court. His girlfriend does. Get everything done. All the court, like, we had the sheriff there just in case he was there again. We didn't know what we were to expect. The sheriff knew him, and he's like, typically we're like, "Yeah, just like you knew it, but you need us." So the sheriff's there. They were all gone. They went through the house with us just in case. We found, I still have this in my office. We refer to this as the last remains. Which is the
For
styrofoam.
those listening, it's a styrofoam skull,
Yeah. So
not a real one.
that I've still got. That I occasionally will send a picture to the roofer and I'm like, "This could have been you," and he doesn't appreciate it as much. Um, but I
He's
mean,
not in on the joke,
no, he's
or
like, "I
he's too
appreciate
in
it,
on the
but
joke.
you weren't there to witness." And I'm like, "Fair." So it's been, yeah, that was probably one of the craziest stories I've had. About a month later, he actually ended up getting arrested because he had been able to do, he was going to sell something and it was basically a lure. And he went, the person he tried to sell something to came and showed up and he went tried to beat him with a hammer. But the guy, when he first hit him, he left a crowbar on the floor. And so he got the crap kicked out of him with a crowbar. And so
How did you
his
hear that
arrest photo,
story?
what was that?
How did you hear that story? The follow up.
Well, we saw the bookings and it made the newspaper. So, and I'm like, "Oh, okay,
Wow.
that. It's one of those times I look at my wife, I'm like, "That could have been me." And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "My job can be an adventure sometimes." So it's pretty
Um,
funny.
I mean, obviously, mental health, you mentioned that management teams are really on the ground floor. And I think it's one of the reasons that I feel so passionate about telling these stories, right, of what management teams go through. Mental health is a really big issue that you are often on the front lines of dealing with. How do you, like, just give us some thoughts on kind of what folks should be doing in a situation like that? Obviously, you have some good community ties, which helps, but are there any things like that that folks going through an issue like this should be aware of?
I I think the biggest thing is know what, mental health resources are available. Like, even like when he wasn't um being triggered, he was actually a solid guy and we got to know, like, I got to actually know him. He's like, "Hey, here's what this is, here's what this is, like, here's why." And I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense." So, like, I knew basically going in, and I mean, and it took time, like, not everything, I mean, works this way. But luckily we were able to have times when he wasn't triggered that I could get context. So I know typically I'm like, this is not one that I need to come in like both guns blazing to get my point across because I don't know where he's at. And the last thing I want to do is trigger him.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just had to deal with him with kid gloves, really, for the most part. And just be like, here's the situation, here's this. And then if he escalated, I'm like, that's fine. I'm going to go walk away. Like, doesn't change anything. Here's what I'm doing. I went into great detail on here's the steps. I made sure, like, I recorded everything, you know, all the conversations. So if anything came back, like, we've got that. But even in smaller situations, just understanding, like, and being able to have conversations when I mean, we have a lot of domestic violence in tenants that we work with. And if a woman has been through that, like, they're in a lot of ways understandable, they're broken at different levels. And so, like, for me as a male, I have to handle that completely different. Like, okay, here's the situation, here's where we're at, and understand and kind of take them where they're at and understand, like, that's where they're at. And we meet them and work with them where they're at. And they may not necessarily get to where, you know, you necessarily need them to be. But we can work with them here, and like, that's their success. And you empower them and find that way to help them have that success, and with whatever mental health they're going, like, that they're dealing with, if it's depression, if it's anxiety, any of that. I'm shocked at the rise of anxieties and tenants that are dealing with that. I mean, just a basic conversation, just sometimes with some of the tenants that we work with, um, like, it throws them. Like, hey, we just got to do an inspection, and they just, like, spiral, and you're like, you're good. We're not looking for anything. We're not thinking you did anything. We're just checking condition of the property. Like, we're good, or the anxiety to communicate, because it's like, hey, I'm going to be like a day late on rent. Am I going to lose my housing? Um, it's like, no, one day you communicated, like, thank you so much. Like, you let me know, we're good. You didn't hide out. We'd have a different conversation hid out, right? Um, so just understanding and being able to take people where they're at, you know, and a lot of times they won't volunteer. It's like, hey, I struggle with depression, and there's no reason for them to. But as you understand and you work with enough tenants and understand the signs that, okay, this person may be struggling a little bit with depression, so that understands why their, apartment may not be as clean, or they're struggling to keep a job, and different things like that.
It takes a high amount of EQ and empathy, right? And I think you don't get into this business if you're not inherently motivated by people, right? You're providing housing at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Oh yeah, and people are amazing. Like, it's awesome. Like, I absolutely love what we do, and how we do it, and it's awesome. Um,
Okay, I have a couple roof questions.
okay.
Having gone through some of these jobs myself. So you had an exposed roof for about 6 weeks with
Yes.
snow. Like, what's going on in that time? Just
Um,
water coming in.
it was water coming in. It was rain. We'd get text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning as there's a major thunderstorm. You realize I have a hole in my roof, right? And you're like, we tried to fix it. Like, this one's on you. Like, we went in. I mean, luckily we knew we had to gut that place anyways. That was the one saving
Okay.
grace.
It was not all sunk cost.
No, we knew anyways, but we're still like, this is a lot more than what we had expected. We pulled everything. We had to do a little bit more of the gutting than we expected to make sure there was no moisture and everything was dry, and stuff in the studs. But yeah, he was
Do
getting
you
rained
still
on. His bed
manage?
was right under the hole, and I'm like, why do you not at least move your bed?
Move the bed. It's
But it
hard.
was,
I'm sure, you get to a point in a situation like that where it's impossible to problem solve, right?
yeah, and we know he was just leaving the bed there just so we could complain and blame us. And I'm like, you threatened to kill the roofer. Like, this one's on you. I'm not saying I haven't made mistakes. I'm not saying I haven't had vendors leave the job half done. Um, Never had a roofer do that, except for when he was threatening to be killed. So this one's kind of on you.
That's an extreme case of it. Do you still manage that property
I
today?
do. So we
Wow.
still
Okay.
manage it. We've had 5 tenants since. So,
Okay.
and it's
Brand new roof though.
brand new
Great.
roof. We haven't had to worry about that. So no leaking roof. So, and it's kind of funny
Um,
because one of the new tenants like, have you had any issues with the roof or just because that's what, like any, and I'm like, no, we've been good. Like it's a brand new roof. And I just don't want to be like, let me tell you a story.
One of these days, when their lease ends, you'll send them the episode link to this podcast and be like, that was yours.
Yeah, there you go. They
You're
didn't
like, it's a
tell me
great roof now,
that.
though, right?
I don't know how to explain that Google review. They put me in the house.
In the house, yeah. Um, do you still do work with your buddy, the roofer? Does he come out for other jobs?
He has. He's done other jobs. It's a kind of a running joke. We'll send him stuff, and I'm like, I promise you will not be threatened to be killed on this one.
I don't know. That seems like a
So
strong promise, but
it's one I feel comfortable making for the most part. Luckily, I told him, I said the guy's a little like he's got some mental health issues, so just but he's just like you undersold it, and I'm like I didn't realize the full extent either, dude. So my
yeah,
bad.
you're like, we're all realizing this together in real time.
Yes.
I think this is a really interesting situation where you're obviously trying to do your best to protect your staff and your vendors, but you also have, a contract to attempt to protect the asset
Mm-hmm.
itself. How are you communicating that back to the owner and, yeah, like what are you doing to manage expectations in a situation like that?
Um, we were luckily the owner. It was him that put the tenant in, so it wasn't us. Like I'm like, we're cleaning up your mess. This is a little uglier than what we thought, but we're just along for the ride. And he's just like, okay. And of course, he's like, how much is this going to cost me? I don't know yet. Like, we're just
Well, you still
figuring
have
this
the
out.
business, so
Yep,
seems like things are going well now.
definitely, definitely. So,
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Derek. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they?
they can find me online at netgainpm.com. That's the best way. So,
Awesome. Excellent. Well, that's today's episode of If These Walls Could Talk. Super is the AI powered communication and workflow tool for property managers. To learn more about Super, visit us at www.hiresuper.com. To share a story you have for a future episode, email us at hello@hiresuper.com.